Hello and welcome to our webinar today, AI's transformative role in healthcare and life sciences, during which we will look at the opportunity to unleash the investment potential for AI. So again, welcome everybody. I think you'll find this a fascinating webinar addressing some of the opportunities to use AI, particularly with the heightened interest in AI, particularly generative AI across all industry sectors. But today we're specifically looking at that opportunity in healthcare and life sciences. This webinar is organized by Oakland's, the leading mid-market M&A advisory firm, helping entrepreneurs and evolving companies to reach their full potential. We are a global network of investment banks and M&A advisors with some 850 people in 45 countries, having closed more than 1,900 deals in the past 5 years, and have an especially strong record in tech-related industries. Oakland, De Silva and Phillips, with whom I'm managing director, is New York-based investment bank and M&A advisor in the Oakland's network, and we focus exclusively on TMT with specialisms in media and publishing, marketing services, SaaS and AI, information services, events, education, or education TMT, and healthcare TMT. My name is John Matthews, and I'm your host for today. I also co-lead the Oakland's AI playbook. So my contribution here is from the AI side, and I'll be joined by my colleague, Elaine Riddell, who is also managing director with Oakland's De Silva and Phillips, who is our sort of healthcare specialist, particularly to do with the commercialization opportunities within the healthcare and life sciences sectors. We anticipate a lively discussion today. I'm very happy to introduce you to an esteemed group of speakers, 3 of them entrepreneurs in the sector, and 1 of them an experienced practitioner and strategist in terms of the use of digital technologies in healthcare over many years. And so our speakers today will be Frank Baitman, who is the latter as a digital health strategist, Amit Garg, CEO and co-founder of High Labs, Ian Chapman-Banks, CEO and co-founder of Scream Technologies, and Vijay Sikka, CEO and founder of Sikka AI. Amit and Ian and Vijay will be joining me later for a panel discussion. Before that, Elaine will be discussing with Frank some of the opportunities presented for AI within the healthcare and life sciences sector, with a particular focus on the opportunities for generative AI. But first, I'd like to just run through quickly a couple of slides to set the scene. So healthcare is in crisis in a lot of parts of the world. Spiraling costs, staff shortages, increased demands, in part caused by aging populations, but other factors, and systems that have become beyond human scale and complexity, beyond what we can fix ourselves without the help of technology, and misaligned incentives. The list goes on. Healthcare needs AI or something like AI to transform it and to get back to the business of caring for people and their health and wellness. This requires investment in AI and also in AI M&A, as there will be a need for restructuring, innovation, and to be able to scale these innovations as a catalyst to support the transformation of both healthcare systems, pharmaceuticals, and the other allied areas such as wellness and fitness and so on. As we can see, the spend on AI in healthcare is projected to grow at quite a significant pace over the next few years through to 2030 and no doubt beyond, but these are some market statistics available to make this point. And there have been some deals. It's not necessarily a new thing. AI has been around, applied to healthcare for quite some years. In fact, one of the first applications of AI back some 40, 50 years ago was a system called Mycin, an e-Mycin. So there's a long history of applying AI to healthcare, but more recently, we can see here, there's already been quite some deal activity in the space, and some of those big deals. So it's already in motion, but it's still early days in terms of M&A in these sectors. And then if we start to look at generative AI, again, in terms of sort of market forecasts, that it's forecast to grow at quite a clip over the next few years, as it is in other sectors, but healthcare is mirroring that in terms of the expected growth of generative AI and its uses in the sector. And this, perhaps not surprising, goes along with the increased investment, particularly at the early stage or with early stage companies in terms of generative AI. So we've seen, particularly this year, following on the heels of the growth of interest and the public awareness of generative AI that ChatGPT created after its launch last December, and getting to 1 million users in record time, we're seeing a lot of investment going into this sector, and a lot of that is spilling over into the healthcare area. And just to show an example of this, here's some examples of some deals, mostly investment deals that have been done already in generative AI in healthcare this year. At this point, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Elaine and Frank Baitman to start a discussion about the opportunities for AI and generative AI in healthcare and life sciences.
Thank you, John. You've set the stage very nicely. So hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Riddell. And as background, I would think of myself as a data analytics and insights executive focused on healthcare, with particular expertise in life science. And my experience is largely around the transformation of organizations for performance improvement. I'll take a minute now and ask Frank to introduce himself, and then I'll come back on to set the stage, and we'll move forward.
Glad to be joining everyone today. My own professional background has been sort of at the intersection of technology and healthcare. A little over 20 years ago, it began when I was in IBM corporate strategy. At that time, I helped to launch IBM's life sciences business, building upon the many technologies that I had seen in IBM research. At that time, we kind of thought technology was going to change healthcare. That was just around the corner, and it's just around the corner again. That's what we're going to tell you today. Over the ensuing years, I've worked in digital health startups and in big pharma, always believing that healthcare's adoption of technology would, in fact, be just around the corner. While in the U.S. government, first as Chief Information Officer at the Social Security Administration, and then the same role at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, I helped to create incentives for the adoption of electronic health records. And we have certainly hit that tipping point in terms of adoption. But in terms of their utility, I think we have a ways to go yet. And that's what we're here to talk to you about today.
Frank and I look forward to our discussion with you today, and you'll see why I'm using the word discussion in a couple of minutes. But I thought what I would do is actually set the stage, particularly focused on the healthcare side of things. And I do also want to say that while our focus is largely on the U.S. market, the direction is equally relevant for the EU. And in fact, in many regards, the EU is out ahead of the US due to a single payer system, effectively a single decision maker who's focused on the patient's well-being beyond the short term of an annual insurance policy. So that's kind of an important consideration as you listen to us today. To put the the healthcare crisis into perspective, for all 38 high-income countries, healthcare spending as a share of GDP has been steadily increasing, and in fact, the increase is outpacing the economic growth of these 38 high-income countries. And when we look at the U.S. spending is in fact 2 times the average of these 38 countries at 17.8% of GDP. In 2021 versus the overall average for these countries at 9.6%. So you could well say that the U.S. is in crisis, and there is a focus on how to bring these costs under control. John named many of them that are driving costs: the aging population, U.S. and Europe and around the world, innovations in medical technology, and the rising prices in the healthcare sector are all contributing contributing to this this outpacing of economic growth. In response, what we've seen is payers, whether they're government payers or private insurers, this being the case in the US in particular, what they're doing is they're transforming from volume-based, so paying for all activity, to value-based, paying for outcomes. So effectively, we can think of healthcare, incrementally moving forward to an outcomes economy. So as you might imagine, these fundamentals are really attractive to investors in innovator companies and disruptors, and they're effectively putting their money or placing their bets behind high-value solutions to real-world problems. And I think one of the things that's going to help accelerate some of the innovation that we're anticipating, and this is according to Bain, that in fact since 2017, the cost to train an AI system has dropped 1,000-fold. So we're seeing that the intersection of the cost of technology, the cost of storage, the cost of analytics, helping to accelerate this move to AI and generative AI. So we're excited to move forward. And so what I'm going to do now is ask Frank to bring his incredible background to bear and help us get a sense of where we see AI and specifically generative AI moving forward to help bring costs down in healthcare and in life science.
In preparing for this talk, we had a little bit of fun, and we kept thinking about IBM's pivot to become a services company. During my days there, Lou Gerstner famously compared the challenge of moving this massive enterprise to services as dancing with elephants. And we think there's an analogy to healthcare too. It too is a massive enterprise that must change. And artificial intelligence, in particular, generative AI, is game-changing. But it's a tool, just a tool. Rather than an elephantine ecosystem and organizational structures paired with mass scale, which is what IBM was, and the switch was switching this mass, we now think that perspective, agility, and the ability to laser focus on the end game are going to be those things that generative AI brings to the table. You have a lot more perspective when you're 5 meters up than when you're 3 meters up. So we think comparing generative AI to a giraffe makes a lot of sense, and you'll see that throughout our presentation. As much as services seemed a massive pivot for IBM, they were evolutionary. IBM had already mastered hardware and software that were driving everything from operations to analytics. The company was now simply selling knowledge instead of tools. We believe that generative AI will likewise be evolutionary at the start. Perhaps it's best to think of generative AI as services on steroids, driving improvements into every corner of healthcare. And as evolutionary changes take root, they'll ultimately be upending the current structure of healthcare. One likely scenario we imagine, and I think we all have our fingers crossed for this, is that patients become empowered through this transformation. And more on this in a moment. So we built this mind map that I don't think anyone can possibly see at the moment, so we're going to zoom in a moment. We built this to identify early use cases for generative AI. From a business perspective, you want to know where adoption is going to take place, who's going to use it, how they're going to use it. And it's our thesis that early adoption is going to address current use cases. I'm sure that's what you'll also hear from the industry panelists who are using AI in their businesses right now. Since they're current use cases, they're grouped around today's stakeholders.
So think of the mind map and the center of it, and the center of the mind map are all of the key stakeholders who are currently supporting the healthcare system, from the self-insured employers to the government payer to the self-insured payers to patients to providers to the manufacturers, in this instance, life sciences, and the retailers, so think pharmacies and labs. all of these stakeholders remain at the center. However, what's new, as Frank has said, is that each of these stakeholders are developing their own generative AI enabled use cases to bring the efficiency and the quality and the the speed to the healthcare marketplace, enabling that also in what maybe not here, but if you reflect back to the map when you see the slides later, what's happening is you're starting to see each of these stakeholders starting to create connective tissue. So AI, generative AI, is enabling the connection of, as an example, physicians / providers to patients, patients to payers, payers to physicians. So you're starting to see this connectivity starting to break down the silos between these stakeholders to start to bring a more integrated and effective healthcare experience to the patient.
So one of the great mysteries of electronic health records is what they mean and to whom. Who's using them, what insights they're getting out of them. I have to tell you, I recently changed primary care physicians, and he basically told me, I can't make heads or tails out of your electronic health records. Let's just talk about you. So all this history went into a black hole. EHRs are increasingly long in length. Sometimes they're randomly organized, with labs being separated from clinical notes and diagnoses buried in ICD-10 codes and DSM codes. Imagine how generative AI applied to this problem could, in fact, address it. It may first manifest in a patient's various EHRs becoming integrated with one another. But play that out a bit. Consumers are increasingly contributing data to their health records, with connected devices collecting their vitals. What if that data were fully integrated into a virtual electronic health record and generative AI helped to make sense of it all? Elaine has talked about patients spending less time with their primary care physicians, but what if you had a virtual concierge? Instead of paying someone hundreds of dollars a month just to be available to you, you actually had an AI tool that helped you identify healthcare professionals you should be seeing after it had combed through all your various health records, integrated them, and found insights. This is the sort of evolutionary change that could result in bold new business opportunities.
So what we're seeing in the marketplace is that there are successful new entrants that are going to be able to fill the gaps in the current healthcare system to enable this evolution. And so let me talk about the I started to mention the evolution with the connectivity. The connections across the healthcare ecosystem are essential in terms of being able to think of the patient as a whole being, as a whole human. So critical to moving forward and supporting the whole patient and being patient-centric is the interoperability of patient records. So basically all the data being able to come together in a foundational way to help understand a patient and the patient in the context of the population. This becomes the foundation for, this is where we are today, I guess, and what we're starting to build. And this foundational record then helps us move into what we see as the next phase of healthcare. And that is a single source of truth, a trusted single source of truth. All of the data about the patient that is understandable by the physician, not like Frank just shared about his experience with his concierge. And that these foundational records, as I mentioned, are not just for a patient, but for the whole community, and the community could well be the whole country. And so generative AI with this foundational record is then going to be able to extract the data that is needed in order to support specific use cases, specific jobs to be done, to use language that Andreessen Horowitz is now using to capture this transformation that is going on with the aid of generative AI. With this foundational record, we then move to what we believe is a patient-centered, physician-led ecosystem of providers, and that these physicians will be AI assisted. The generative AI jobs to be done will start to take over the mind-numbing and time-consuming administrative activities that take a physician away from caring for patients. Equally, the generative AI jobs to be done will support and enable the physician assistants and the nurse practitioners. So we see that more and more there's a focus on the patient, the whole patient, and the physician being able to focus on care as opposed to administrative detail.
I mentioned longstanding aspiration that healthcare would adopt and adapt to technology as other industries have. Well, we believe this aspiration is actually going to be achieved soon. It seems obvious, but healthcare ought to revolve around the patient. In other words, the patient needs to be at the center. And that change began with the introduction of electronic health records in the 1990s. But they were initially used principally at academic and other large institutions. They weren't helpful when you visited your community facility or your local doctor. And then standards had to be developed to make them usable as network tools. The vision has not comported with the reality. At first, doctors weren't looking to EHRs for clinical information, and those technology vendors complied by designing them to solve the Byzantine coding and billing puzzle. Each stakeholder in this ecosystem solved for their own business needs, creating proprietary databases that are anything but patient-centered. And in the midterm, we see generative AI as changing this, simplifying this, in part because of the economics of maintaining these increasingly complex databases, and in part to address government transparency directives. But we think the breakout will truly occur when there is pressure to address high-cost, data-intensive therapies, such as oncology drugs and CAR T-cell therapies. We think those, trying to adapt to those is in fact going to cause the various stakeholders to want to pull their databases together. When this happens, one scenario that seems increasingly likely is the emergence of integrated healthcare ecosystems. When United Healthcare, Anthem Health, and perhaps Amazon decide to become Kaiser Health, we'll know that we've seen a transformation. It won't be single payer as in Europe, but it'll be a sort of single payer. In short, one likely scenario for generative AI is that the patient is once again at the center of healthcare, a patient-centered economy that focuses on healthcare outcomes. As one doctor said to me recently when opining on his hopes for generative AI, quote, "Doctors will get to be doctors once again." And I think we have some significant opportunities to make generative AI the enabler of the change we all want to see in healthcare.
So, in fact, you've heard me talk about the robust patient record, that patient record needs to be foundational to support the jobs to be done, the use cases to move forward, the overall healthcare system. Well, in fact, the future is now, and this is a chart. It's a little bit of an eye chart, but what it represents are those companies. Some of them public, some of them supported by venture capital. And these are companies that at the bottom left are companies that are providing electronic medical records into this foundational database of robust patient records. The companies at the top right are those companies that have created the databases representing the whole of the US, or virtually the whole of the US, with the highest quality of medical records, as well other types of data like genomic data. So they're building extremely robust foundations and layering on top of those foundations jobs to be done, otherwise known as use cases, for a broad range of stakeholders. And the higher the if you will, the robustness of the data and the breadth of the use cases, the more highly valued these firms are. And some good examples are Tempest, which is focused on oncology and blending in genomic data, Komodo Health, which has extremely robust records and use cases focused on life science commercialization, as well supporting providers and payers. We also have up at the top of the chart, Purple Labs and Definitive Health, which are focused more on commercialization applications, enabling sales organizations for life science. So you can see, if you look at some of the numbers, that the companies that are inputs to that foundational record are robustly trading at 1 to 5 times revenue, and these what you're seeing in brackets are multiples of revenue, while the companies that have that whole record and a portfolio of jobs to be done for each of the payers or each of the stakeholders rather, you're seeing multiples of revenue at multiple times that. And according to CB Insights, as an example, Komodo Health at 22 times revenue. So you can see, even if these numbers are directional, you can see tremendous amount of activity in the marketplace, a lot of financial support behind these organizations in terms of venture funding. And just to go back to Komodo Health, very interestingly, what they have done is not only taken venture capital, but have also acquired smaller tech companies to fill gaps in their overall portfolio. So from an M&A or investment banking point of view, what this map kind of reinforces that there are multiple ways to provide the funding to support the evolution in healthcare and leveraging generative AI, and M&A is also active.
Thank you, Elaine, and thank you, Frank, as well. That was very insightful, and I think it sort of raised the great opportunity here to move doctors away from having so much of their time used for administrative and reporting work, and to get back to the job they're meant to be doing, which is being good doctors, caring for patients, and creating a system that is centered around the patients and not around the system and its machinery itself. And with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. We've got 3 panelists, each of them an entrepreneur in a different part of, or in different parts of the healthcare and life sciences sector. One of them, CEO and co-founder Amit Garg, whose company HIT Labs is using AI to scrub and clean healthcare data to ensure its quality and correctness. Vijay Sikka, who is the CEO and founder of his company Sikka AI, is applying AI at the retail healthcare end of things, supporting the work of doctors, dentists, and veterinarian practices to allow patients, or to allow them to better serve their patients, and also to allow their patients, and I guess in some cases, the parents of their patients, to make appropriate best choices in their interactions and use of the healthcare system. And then finally, Ian Chapman-Banks, who is CEO and co-founder of a Singapore-based it's called an AI MarTech company, who focuses very much on helping healthcare and pharmaceutical companies more personally and effectively communicate and engage with their audiences. I'd like now to just sort of hand over to our 3 panelists to say maybe just a little bit more about what they do, what their companies do, what makes them a little bit different from maybe the others out there, and a brief word about their hopes for the use and future of AI in the healthcare and life sciences sectors.
Sure. Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Amit Garg. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hi Labs. Briefly about me, I'm a technology entrepreneur at heart. Before Hi Labs, I had the opportunity to two other companies, all the way from ground up to successful exits to large private equity firms. And in the last company, I had the opportunity to design the country's first web-based healthcare claims processing system in the Medicaid space. And then the same system was then acquired by CMS to process the Medicare Advantage data for the entire country. And that's where, while working at CMS, I saw how CMS analysts were struggling to analyze insights because of data quality in the data, right? So that's what our mission is at High Labs. We are focusing on cleaning dirty healthcare data, and we feel that's how we are contributing towards transforming healthcare. And our focus is to make sure that the insights from our analytics is implementable, right? Then only we feel we can move the needle. So that's our mission.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you, John, Elaine, and Frank. Fantastic discussion. I really appreciate this opportunity. My name is Vijay Sikka, and at my heart, I am a data plumber. I did AI work at Stanford AI Labs, and before that, I worked in Syracuse, got my master's degree from there. And my work has focused on AI back almost since the late 80s. And this is before AI winter set in, and then AI became sexy again. The work that I did at Stanford, and then following that with Intel, where I led the artificial intelligence labs, was in self-supervised learning. And so for me, I'm a purist at heart. AI to me means neural networks. And it's really good to see all the fantastic amounts of attention and money and compute going into AI. The company Sikka.ai is different in many ways. It's more than 10 years old. We are, as a company, we are actually EBITDA positive, which is rare in the AI world. We are focused on retail healthcare, as John mentioned. Dentists specifically, optometrists, chiropractors, veterinarians, orthodontists, oral surgeons. We have about 140 million patients on our platform and 40 million animal patients, the four-legged kind. And what that does is it brings this entire incredible amounts of data and insights through consent-based and all the appropriate regulatory mechanisms. We are now able to apply that to life insurance, for example, in underwriting. So how oral health compares to general health is well known, and we are able to really use that for underwriting decisions.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me onto this webinar. I'm probably, I get the prize for being the furthest away. I'm probably about 15,000 kilometers from you guys right now in Singapore. My name's Ian Chapman-Banks. Background, coder, physicist, education, University of Chicago, University of Cambridge. And really, my background was senior positions in Apple, Motorola, Dell, and a few sovereign wealth funds. And really, I dedicated myself 10 years ago, really to jumping on to changing the paradigm in health tech. So what does Scream do? We probably have one of the world's largest behavioral databases. We've been able to really build what we call 2.5 to 3 billion synthetic customers. Within those synthetic customers are doctors, our patients. And we've been able to build a business in about 80 countries. And our business is predicated on 30% Americas, 30% Europe, and 30% in Japan. And what we're able to do is really understand think of it as from a marketing services perspective. We work with the go-to-market teams in over 30 pharma companies, getting very good insights into what HCPs are thinking, what claims are they very interested in. And then we've got a GDPR compliant health tech stack, which is very important outside of America because America has the loosest data regulations of any country in the world. Even the Philippines has higher data privacy requirements than the US. Is that all our digital media buying, we place ads in front of essentially doctors and patients for what we call kind of doctor recruitment. A doctor can be worth anything up to $30, $40 million a year. especially oncologists, if we can get them to change their prescribing habits. And for our 30 pharma clients in 70 countries, we're able to give them an ability to really change those doctors' prescribing habits digitally. So in the old days, you had sales guys going out detailing doctors. Right now, we are doing the digital detailing in most countries. Now, that's just step one of what we're doing, because we've also ingested over 2 million clinical trials that have been peer-reviewed. We've ingested every molecule that has ever been approved by the FDA, and about 26 to 30,000 other ancillary molecules which have healthcare benefits. And really, kind of while the pharma companies pay our salary, because we are EBITDA positive, we're going to go full force into early next year into longevity. So what is longevity? As opposed to actually curing, our platform, because we've ingested every molecule that's ever existed, every side effect, every single clinical trial that's ever been published, imagine the situation where I could say to you on the phone, I can probably guarantee you to live 10 years longer and happier and healthier. All you have to do is on our secure service, upload your blood test, upload your iWatch data, and as part of your subscription, we will decode your genome. And we have actually integrated our cognitive AI into all the Gen AI tools. So you would have your personal wellness advisor, which is an avatar, which you can talk to, and they can answer questions, and they will build you your longevity plan, literally week on week, your diet, what you should be doing, your vitamins, whether you need to go back to the doctor. So our vision is for $200 a month, you can actually get complete coverage from HCP type of care. There'll be doctors in the back end, but really your genome has been decoded, you upload your blood test, you upload all your iWatch data, and we'll build your plan to keep alive for another 10 years, more than you would if you didn't use this service. So we're using our pharma clients and our kind of marketing as a service to build out the next platform, what we call longevity. So it's all about prevention, and it's all about using our avatars. We've already trained the avatars right now today. You can talk to them, they can answer questions back, any one question from our database, and it's up and running. We have an alpha version of our longevity platform. We expect to go into beta early next year, and then kind of a closed beta by the end of next year. And that's to build on our existing health tech business with the pharma clients. So our vision is longevity for everybody.
So thank you very much, Ian, Amit, and Vijay. If we can spend maybe just around about 10 minutes having a bit of a discussion, reflecting a little bit on Frank and Elaine's discussion, and also talking about your hopes, challenges, what you've experienced as entrepreneurs in this space, each in very different parts of this market. And yet, listening to you, it all sort of does sound quite connected, that you're all sort of playing different roles, and yet it does seem to come together. And, you know, fascinated by what Vijay is saying, his not necessarily the usual perspective on the healthcare sector, because of the customers that he's dealing with. Ian's perspective here from a different part of the world, and Amit very much in the sort of doing the things that really matter to get the data in place. But I wonder if you could each just say a couple of brief things about what you've learned in your journey as entrepreneurs in this space, and in growing your companies, what you see as maybe some of the challenges and how you're thinking about overcoming those. And if you can also make reference to anything like regulation that's in place, regulation that's coming, and just the culture and so on of the industry that you've had to sort of handle and find ways to sort of make it work.
Yeah, so little bit related to High Labs journey. So my co-founder, who's a cardiologist, he and I started High Labs from the campus of Yale University 9 years ago. And at that time, you know, we were focusing on the sexy use cases, that let's predict who's going to get readmitted, let's predict who's going to get sick in the future. But very soon, both my co-founder and I, we realized that you know, no matter what kind of models you write, what kind of AI you have, if you have dirty data going into it, right, then you will not get the desired outcomes, right? So it's very much like garbage in, garbage out. And with that, we pivoted towards how about we take AI to get to the dirty data, and then from the dirty data, you learn, but you learn from the good part of dirty data, and then clean the dirtiness as well, right? And that resonated really well with the market. And today we are cleaning data for 4 out of the 10 largest health payers in the country, and then several regional health plans. And then we started going towards, if you have an AI solution, how does it help in solving the real world problems for the customers, right? So the first thing in our mind is member experience, because even though our customers are the payers, but the end customer is the member or the patient, right? So the first thing is like access to care. And some of you might know about this, that when you click on that find a doctor link at every health plan site, 50% of the data behind that link is incorrect, right? So the first step towards a patient interaction with the healthcare system is challenging. You don't have the right data to access your care. And that's where we found our first application of our engine, where we analyze large set of data externally from web, from health plans internal data, and then we use Gen AI, we use the regular models. And again, my suggestion to all the entrepreneurs would be, don't get fascinated towards the flashy technology, right? Sometimes very simple solutions can solve some very important problems, right? So focus on what solution solves a real world problems, and that helped us to get to whatever success we have today. The other part I would say is that when you generate all these insights from your AI, make sure that is usable, and that it's prescriptive to the point that your customers are able to use the insights. So it's very much like you can prescribe a medicine to a patient, right? But if the patient doesn't take the medicine, it's not going to make a difference. So exactly in that the same analogy that we follow, that when we generate these insights from an engine, we make sure those insights our customers are able to implement them, and that comes through high level of accuracy, openness in your system. You need to have open architecture of your system so that you can use that information. And the third piece is you need to have the evidence to support your AI. Otherwise, it's very hard, especially in healthcare, for the operators on ground to implement and take actions based on your insights.
Amit, great perspective, because Amit's perspective is very entrepreneurial, real world problem solving. As we traversed our journey, we realized that we built a platform. And just to give you a quick idea, this space that we are in is not hospital space. So we don't have, Cerners and Epics and all the EMR, EHR systems, but there are 400 practice management systems that are used by dentists and optometrists and chiropractors and orthodontists and oral surgeons in US, Canada, UK, Australia, and all the countries. We basically we took the difficult route. We built adapters to all of them. And there are no APIs available. There is no HL7, there's no connectors. We built it. And once we built it, we were able to provide a layer on AI API platform, which has won multiple Best Health API awards. And those API platform allows anyone to build applications on top of it to provide services to the providers, to the dentists, to the veterinarians, optometrists. So from that perspective, our customer is the provider. Even though the provider doesn't pay us anything, who pays us is a subscription-based revenue of companies which are building on top of our API platform. Very similar to companies like Twilio or Stripe, if you will. If you go to a new city and you're calling your Uber driver, chances are that Twilio is the one which is carrying that call. And it doesn't matter what the Uber driver is using in terms of telecommunication system. And that's exactly how our platform works. So as we started to build this platform, we got 140 million patients on our platform. And that started to give us opportunities to actually work with real data. And I think this is one of the key differentiators. I'm going to touch really quickly on two things that you asked, John. One is regulatory part. So regulations are obviously, healthcare has tremendous regulations, HIPAA, consent, within life insurance, because we work in that industry also, is FICRA, FCRA, and then it goes on and on. We realized that we could apply artificial intelligence even before Gen AI became popular. We were able to apply artificial intelligence to help providers with things like next major procedure prediction. Are you going to have to get an implant? Are you going to have to, get your tooth extracted? What is going to happen? For example, if you're in the dentist's office and, you have tooth pain, things like that. We were able to get economic well-being prediction. Is the patient going to be able to pay? So if you think about using AI, we were using AI and we called it boring AI. Honestly, it's boring AI is the new black. And we registered that trademark because ultimately the AI that is going to really make a difference, and this is why it's so important in healthcare, is that it's the boring AI that nobody wants to really spend time on it. But as Amit said, that's really where rubber meets the road, where data matters, regulatory and consent-based mechanisms matter, and how you bring all of it together to help your providers or help your payers make decisions, better decisions. That's really what matters.
And Ian, just quickly, and I'd like to sort of after this ask one final question, which will be about what would make your lives easier in this sector to grow your companies and achieve more success. And then after that, we'll go to Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. So we decided to take a very different approach in terms of cleaning data. We decided that we are not going to get involved in personal data, PII data. So we went out using our cognitive AI engine, and we built profiles on every single type of HCP in the world and patient. So we have built a cognitive probabilistic AI, which will define the 500 nephrologists in the UK and find out exactly what claims they make, the 250,000 oncologists in America by therapeutic area. And we looked at it that way. So we actually understand in our database exactly what nephrologists are interested in, oncologists, in local language in every country. So it's all probabilistic. So we are taking on Kantar and Ipsos in kind of building personas, developing claims, and helping the pharmaceutical companies go to market. Now, this market is worth about $100 billion. And to be brutally honest, that there are very few regulations. So we don't have regulations. We've got to comply with GDPR in Europe, which is kind of easy. PDAP in different parts of the world. US has no regulations on doctors because they're considered public property, so you can actually target them. So in our business model, because we've actually already pre-profiled the doctors, then the clients take a SaaS, a PaaS, or a DaaS platform, and they pay us fees. So it's because we built it in over 80 countries, it's actually very easy to scale. They just log in, tell me what oncologists in Germany are thinking right now that are treating stage 4 breast cancer in Germany, in German, and it'll tell you the answer. And because they've integrated into the Gen AI tech stack, so we're the first company in Asia to actually integrate into Google Vertex AI. We were so new, they didn't have the manual. We did it without the manual that they had. And we also integrate into OpenAI at the same time. So we've got dual integrations into Vertex AI, OpenAI, and then about 10 to 15 integrations into the Gen AI apps, such as DALL-E, Midjourney, into DID, and then into what we call text-to-speech, text-to-text, speech-to-text, speech-to-speech. So you can actually talk to avatars. They will represent a doctor in Japanese in Japan, and Dr. Onaka will tell you exactly the issues that she's having, how she wants to be reached, and how to talk to her. So that's the model that we've built out that is scaling quite nicely. And we went out to raise some money about 3 months ago, and we raised 60% of it in 4 weeks, just by showing these business models, showing the clients, showing the countries, and showing the margin, which is exceptionally high because we've expensed everything. So basically it's just, there's no COGS, right? It's just already been expensed. So the insights and the Gen AI has already been built in. So what are the challenges? Well, we live in the little red dot of Singapore. So for us, with the money we've raised, we now need to open offices in New York and London and Zurich, because actually 80% of the pharmaceutical decisions are made in New York, London, and Zurich. So the coverage doesn't have to be great. So really, my challenge is hiring, right? Finding great talent to actually go out and, prosecute the business. Fundraising has been surprisingly easier than I thought. And now it's deployment of capital, because all the pharma companies know us. I would say that every single marketing manager in the world in a pharma company head office or regional office or country office knows us. It's now a question of scaling through people. That's what keeps me awake at night.
So if we could just do a very quick sort of one line, less than 30 seconds for each of you, what would make things or be helpful for you in growing your businesses in terms of changes in the sector, to sort of grease the wheels for you?
So in our world where we are focusing on cleaning dirty data, my request would be, and that's where I'm facing some challenges, for the large businesses such as payers and providers to be open in terms of data sharing. Because as I said, sometimes for those data errors, you do not even have the source of truth, or it's very hard to get the source of truth. And our technology, which is using the dirty data to clean that data itself. And that can happen when we have large amount of data, and if we have willingness of the businesses to share those insights with each other. And I think clean data is going to help the entire ecosystem. So that's one request I would have for the payers and providers to be more open towards sharing data with each other. Again, with all the security and everything in place, and the spirit of competition also in place. But as one of my professors at Yale told us that, taught us that there is cooperation, then there's competition, and there's something in the middle which is cooperation, and that can solve a lot of problems for entrepreneurs like us.
I mean, look, we've scaled the platform. It's just being somebody based in Singapore. How do I physically transplant myself, clone myself to put talent into New York, London, and Zurich? That's my big challenge, because we don't have regulation. Our scaling is now down to people, and of course, more funding next year.
In our case, first of all, I agree with the openness, call to openness. I also feel that it is one of those things that we probably may not be ever able to solve, because that is how these guys protect their dynasties and identities. The approach that we took was, let's just build an open system and layer it on top of existing systems. And so we are adding around 25 to 30 new practices a day. And that's allowing us to get to 200, 250 million patients by first quarter of next year. So we will continue our journey, and our goal will be to keep bringing this open API, which is just transforming, in our opinion, in the small world that we are in, the solutions. The second part is Gen AI. Gen AI is receiving a lot of attention. Large language models are great, but large language models are one section. Right now, all oxygen is being consumed by them, but there is a lot more to AI than just the large language models and Gen AI. So in my opinion, Gen AI has helped us a great deal, and our platform is using it for both patients and providers. But there are other AI approaches which I think should also see the light of the day.
That's great. Thank you very much for raising that point, Vijay. I think that's an important point, that although all the focus at the moment seems to be on AI in the press and the discussions, it's not only about AI, generative AI. There are other AIs that are important, proven, and can do a great job in this sector. So we did have someone asking about, so Raghu here asked about, are you collaborating to speed up the rollout of your platforms? How are you working with other parties to really sort of accelerate your go-to-market, getting into the hands of your customers?
I can answer that. We have, so right now we've evolved from going direct, which is really hard, going direct in 78 countries. We're actually now partnered with IQVIA, and actually just onboarded companies like Omnicom Health, Havas Health. So we have gone full partner mode and just have a very small headcount to manage. The advertising agency is focused on healthcare, and IQVIA, which is I think a $50 billion kind of healthcare consulting company. So we've gone full on partnering in different countries.
Vijay?
From our perspective, we are continuing to grow in geographical regions. So the next up is Australia and and then the Europe. We are in US and Canada. So partnerships with all the different data, information, practice management system, EMR, EHR systems is our next steps.
And Amit?
Yeah, in our world, we are currently focusing on the payers market. But the next phase would be to move towards the providers market. And since we are already analyzing data coming from providers on the payer side, that makes perfect sense for us to deliver value in the provider space. And that's where we are looking for the partnership that can help us to get into that space.
That's great. Thank you, the panelists, Amit, Vijay and Ian, and also thank you, Elaine and Frank. I think just to quickly wrap up on what we've learned today, this is a space with a lot of opportunity. There's some real challenges, some of them to do with the sort of inherent complexities of the system. These are going to be different in different parts of the world, or even within different parts of the sector itself within countries, different areas. And we've had good coverage of that with our entrepreneurs here today who have come from different parts of the healthcare areas, which is excellent. It gives us that sort of broadness and breadth of coverage and some wonderful insights, I think, into what can happen in the future, what's going to happen in the near future, the longer term, but also where there might be some things that could help this and really grease the wheels. And again, focus on that whole idea, and Elaine said it, about sort of being patient-centric, and move towards a patient-centric healthcare system that cares about us all and cares for us all, and helps us keep our health for as long as we can, and helps us when maybe we can't always keep it. And I think that's what we all hope for. And I think here AI and generative AI today is opening up some great possibilities to accelerate that happening and to make it something that could happen in all our lifetimes. So thank you, everybody. This was
Thanks,
excellent.
John.